Can we just get back to that for a second? It's a steel product that farmers use?
It was like the thing that kicked off the Industrial Revolution,
Okay.
maybe.
But you're saying it's better than that.
It's better than that.
It's like the Industrial Revolution.
Revolution.
Is here.
Yeah, let's say.
And then there's yogurt.
And then there's
let's
yogurt.
say that it's the best thing since the Industrial Revolution.
So Figma.
$20 billion. It's just crazy to think, especially because they started 10 years ago, creating $20 billion worth of, like, I guess, proposed value in 10, 11 years.
The earned media impressions from Adobe getting mentioned through Twitter, through all the discussion itself. Like, we have to put a price. I assume it's a few $100 million.
Yeah. But I mean, Abhishek, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So what do you think about the whole, I mean, everyone has some, story to tell with Figma or the merger acquisition. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great outcome for the founder, and they deserve it. I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I agree. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because you're building Covalent, right? And we'll get into that in a second. But last night I was with my roommates and we were watching The Social Dilemma. Have you watched it?
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, or I don't know which camera, for people that don't know what it is, it's basically a documentary, came out Netflix 2020. It had a bunch of like execs from, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and they were basically talking about kind of like the negative effects of social media and, how anti-big tech, where your data is going, et cetera. My thought process from kind of talking to my roommates after is that a lot of people get on social media with pure intentions, just to connect with their friends, keep up with family. Their friends all have it, so they want to get on. In your opinion, building Covalent, do you think that the pros outweigh the cons of, being on social media? Because you are connected, but then you deal with, like all of the dopamine effects and hyperstimulation and all those.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say, right? So in The Social Dilemma, one of the concepts that they covered was positive intermittent reinforcement, which is kind of an unintended consequence of social media. Like social media, I think, fundamentally, it's not like Zuckerberg designed Facebook to be a bad thing for the world, right? But one of the unintended consequences is that when you get that notification, when you see that red number by the header or whatever, right? That gives you a little dopamine hit. And so that is what's called positive intermittent reinforcement, which means it's like positive reinforcement on like an irregular time interval. And so when you get that, you get kind of addicted to that. You get hooked to it. And I think when that happens, that's like where the negative effects to people come in.
Interesting. And so are you on kind of Instagram, Snapchat, whatever?
I don't really use Instagram. I use Snapchat to stay in touch with friends. There's a lot of friends who, maybe I don't really have time to text all the time, but I have a streak going with them. And so I can send them a picture every day of like something stupid, like my wall, And it's like, are you guys familiar with the mere exposure effect?
Tell me about it.
So it's a phenomenon in psychology where, so I'll tell you about what happened. Basically, these researchers did an experiment where they had people walk by other people in a hallway. And there were two groups, one in which two people walked by each other and one in which two people have never met.
Okay.
So they found that they essentially asked both people, would they be willing to help the other person with something? With like a small task, And they found that the people who walked by each other in the hallway were 70% more likely to want to help the other person. And they never talked. They just walked by each other in a hallway. So just by being exposed to that other person, they were more willing to help. And, that I think that holds true for friendships as well. Like if I don't hear about you for 3 years, it's unlikely that our friendship will continue. But like if I hear from you every so often, then it's much more likely that I'll stay up to date on your life and our friendship will continue. And you don't need a lot for that to happen. Like the whole point of the mere exposure effect is you don't even need to talk to the person. You just need to be exposed to them in some way.
So you're saying that they made eye contact if they saw each other.
Exactly.
And it was 70% more likely to help?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I would have guessed 10 to 20, right? If you do run that experiment, I don't know, 100 times.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really cool.
I guess like format matters a lot in terms of the impact it'll have. So for example, when my age group kind of got on social media, and I was talking to Vishal about this, it was Instagram, right? So for a lot of you guys, it's Facebook or MySpace or whatever. when I was like 6th, 7th grade, that's when people started to use Instagram. And so my relationship with social media will be a lot different than, for example, your guys' relationship. Now I don't have Instagram. Like I have an account. I don't think I've opened it in like a month. And before that, like I don't have the app on my phone. Same thing with Snapchat. I don't have the app on my phone unless I'm traveling because I like Snapchat memories. Or like I use Twitter, but I also like try to only use it on my laptop. And I find that I'm actually not very addicted to Twitter. Something because of, like I know people are, right? But for me, the fact that it's written, I only consume it when I'm intentionally trying to kill time, like I'm waiting in line, which, you know, you can make the argument that that's still bad.
Yeah.
Or I'm like actually actively like looking at someone's profile.
But doesn't it depend how you use it? Like I use Twitter for information.
Yeah.
And staying up to date, but I also follow certain people where they have daily updates and relevant things to tweet that actually affect what I'm doing for the day. Or
Really?
what I have to carry on. I mean, even just speaking sports specifically, like Twitter is where you go for breaking news, injuries, even game. They do film analysis, breakdown, beat reporters report on practices. So to give you a sense of that, and then if you want to get into crypto stocks, right? It's like Twitter.
True.
You check it first thing in the morning.
True.
And you'll get everyone's kind of all the influencers breakdown on what's going on. So, right. It's like, I guess if you're using it to read, I don't know, messages versus that, it's a little different.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, you might have a different take.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think like I, for example, use Twitter as a source of information because I think a lot of information is first published on Twitter. I find out most interesting tech information that I know about through Twitter. And so I totally agree. I think people use social media in a lot of different ways, and those are kind of good examples.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so the reason I brought that up was to read off the website of Covalent. Spark life-changing connections for your people, community, team, etc. My first question is, how does it actually do that?
Yeah, so we have a very heavy emphasis on one-on-one connection. And so for context, we are pivoting, but I'll tell you about like the old version of Covalent.
For sure.
Which is to basically help facilitate one-on-one introductions with people who are relevant to you in some way. And our whole thesis is that relevant means something different for each organization. And so when you think about the best friends that you have, I'll put this question to you guys, like what makes a really good friend a really good friend?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a little bit philosophical. My bad.
I would say honesty first. So we were talking about this. I'll bring it up too. I had just finished the Evan Spiegel Snapchat book.
How to turn down $1 billion.
How to turn down $3 billion. But who's counting except him? But one of the pillars of the culture at Snap was you are open, honest communication. You discuss any personal conflicts immediately in real time, and you do not broadcast that to the public. So everything is dealt with internally. Everyone has a chance to hash out whatever's going on and come to a resolution without the ability of, when you don't do things like that, you leave the opening of, well, someone might go to the press, someone might, complain to their significant other, and that word gets around. And he built a culture where the communication is very open, and he wanted to keep those conflicts to his community of employees, which he wanted to consider you friends. Mm-hmm. So I almost want to say, like, that level of honest and open communication is what makes a good friend versus, I guess, even like a general acquaintance or someone that maybe you're not sure what their intentions are.
Yeah.
In a certain way.
I feel like the base of having similar important values, right? Like everyone has certain values. Some of them are more important than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say with like my best friends, similar values, I guess communication is also important, right? But I've also noticed that while we have the same values, I'd say two best friends are very different. For example, I'm kind of in this whole like startup world, right? My best friend in LA, he did a switch from CS and now he's on a pre-med track.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wants to, like, we always have our conversations and he's always like, bro, like, you don't have to kind of do all these things. The money's not worth it, et cetera, et cetera. and he's more like oriented directly on directly impacting people's lives. My other kind of best friend is very academic track, right? CS major, Berkeley, very like into school.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that like we're all very different, but because our undermining values are the same and I trust them, they're my best friends.
Yeah. So I think both of you kind of hit the nail on the head for most people. So for most people, the things that make somebody a really good friend is foundational value alignment. And that's like the underlying thing that needs to be there. And the second piece of that is kind of you need to be able to spend time with this person and not hate them, right? Like, because yeah, and some of that is like more shallow. Like I have foundational value alignment with a lot of people that I don't really enjoy spending time with. So, but you really need both of those things to make
Explain
a really
that.
good relationship.
Wait. So you have foundational value alignment
Yeah,
with people you don't enjoy spending time with.
totally. For example, like I like playing sports. I don't like drawing. My 4th grade art teacher told me I wasn't creative. I hate drawing.
Okay.
Still, to this day, I'm like traumatized. I cannot draw.
I also hate drawing. So I
Beautiful.
do.
We'd get along. We should be
and
friends.
I'm a lefty, and
I'm a lefty too.
are you really?
Yeah. Foundational value alignment.
Wow. Hopefully you don't hate being here.
I think we're gonna have to cap this one at 10 minutes for the total length of the podcast.
But no, what's interesting why you said it like that was lefties are more creative, but they give I don't know about you, but they gave us all right-handed. Like so, all the scissors are right-handed. The ink smears when you write in your left hand.
Yeah.
So like drawing, like I still remember in grade school it was like traumatizing because everything would come out like trash. I can't cut with the scissors. You get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's exactly it. Like I don't like drawing. I bet there are plenty of artists with whom I have foundational value alignment, but we wouldn't be like that good friends because like I'd want to go play sports. They'd want to like draw something. And like that, we just don't want to spend time in the same way.
I see what you're getting at. Okay.
And so the point is that there are these more like shallow things that you need to be able to connect with people on. And so if I like talking about sports, then I will generally enjoy spending more time with people who also like talking about sports, right? If I like cooking, I will generally want to spend more time with people who also enjoy cooking. And so I think there are two components here. One is the foundational value alignment, and the second is aligning on the more shallow things like interests and things like that, right? And so all of that is to say that our whole thesis at Covalent is that those are the two things that really, really matter. And how do you try to help introduce people who have those two things in common? And it's a really hard problem, right? Like measuring foundational value alignment is super hard because most people don't even know what their foundational values are.
Yeah.
How do you figure that out?
Great question. Glad you asked. So one of the big things that we do is connect people within organizations. So if you've heard of Lunch Club, they basically introduce people based on interests and skills and experience and things like that. But that's like open to the public. It's a consumer facing app and anybody can be connected through that. What we do different is that we connect people within organizations, which is interesting because the organization you're at, if you're both working at Google, chances are you have pretty high foundational value alignment. If you're both working at a climate startup, you probably have pretty high foundational value alignment. So we use organization essentially as a proxy for foundational value alignment. And then the more shallow things, those are things that are actually much easier to connect people based on and figure out. And so what we do to handle that is basically ask people questions about their interests, their skills, what they enjoy. And those questions differ based on the organization. So for a data science community, for example, the questions might be around what field of ML are you interested in? Or what type of data engineer are you? Right? Versus if it's an art community, it might be what kind of art do you do? Do you sing? Do you like dance? And so the questions are different. And so we built a system that can basically take these arbitrary questions, pose them to the people in the respective organization, and then connect people based on their answers to the question within that organization. And so we've kind of hit on both of those two things, right? Because it's within the same organization, you get that foundational value alignment. And because we're actually connecting people based on the things that make them relevant to each other, you get the more shallow connection as well.
So I'm guessing you have analytics on how well any of those, like how well the software works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Do you find that it actually like generally works to create relationships that work beyond work?
Yeah. So in many cases, yes. Obviously, like it's very challenging to get people to be really good friends in general, right? So if you take a random person off the street, maybe the probability of them becoming a really close friend is like 0.1%, right?
Mm.
Our goal is to bump that probability up to like 20%, 30%. Like, how can we make it so that every third or every other connection that you have through Covalent is going to become a meaningful relationship? And that's like what we were working towards.
Well,
So-
this brings me to a good point because so I know you guys work with Startup Grind, or
Mhm.
that was one of the first people you were talking to when you were developing the product.
Yep.
So we met at Startup Grind.
Oh, wow.
That's an interesting.
So
story.
we've known each other for how long ago is that? 4 months?
May, June, July, August.
And we can bring this into a time factor too, because I'm curious how you see friendships, relationships from a time factor in terms of like how long it takes to establish. But I'll tell you, like like 4 months we met now, right? Podcast,
We're in a podcast studio in San Francisco.
We're here, but based on Startup Grind, but aligning, I would say foundational values very quickly.
Yeah,
We aligned on.
Yeah.
Obviously interests.
So the story of how we actually got, like, it's a very interesting story. So I was with my now current roommate. We were testing an idea for a startup, right? And so we were walking around Startup Grind. We walked in with like this general idea of we want to do something with like co-working spaces, just because WeWorks aren't everywhere. And so the initial thesis was like, how can we come up with some type of a service that like lets people convert any space into a co-working space? And so the first person we pitched, we came up with the pitch on the spot. And then every single person we pitched, we were like getting people saying that they wanted to sign up for the program. We were figuring out pricing. Every single time we pitched it, we would change the price. And then we changed the regions, we changed the product, we changed the pitch. Eventually we get to Vishal. He was at HireRect at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so we go up to him and he starts, what you were selling us on signing up to
Signing up. So we're a hiring app for early stage startups. So so they were obviously, I thought they had like a full business
because again
already in place.
we had pitched I think 20 people by the time we got to him.
they pitched it very well to a point where I was like, oh, you guys must be hiring.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds like you need a lot of support to build something like this, and you're clearly here acquiring customers.
Yeah.
So like that's why they're here.
And so he was selling us on HireRect and we were trying to sell him on partnering with us somehow.
Yeah.
Or like selling HireRect on trying to partner with us because we weren't sure maybe we could get them to be one of our customers. HireRect, give everyone on their organization access to the service.
Yeah.
So whatever, time goes by and I'm in India, right? The rickshaws, the little three-wheel things, they're just everywhere.
Yeah.
And I see HireRect banners everywhere on these rickshaws. And so I don't know why. I just randomly decided to take a picture and I send it to Vishal. Mind you, we haven't spoken since the event. I didn't follow up with him.
Yeah.
None of that. But I just sent him a picture. I'm like, yo, like, good job. Like, good stuff, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it's here. And then he's like, yeah, like, that's cool. You want to do you want to meet up like next week or the week after or something? We go to a Phil's Coffee and we start talking. We're like, oh, we get along on a lot of stuff. You should join the team.
Yeah.
Now, both HireRect and it was called Tivity. Neither of those startups exist today.
Yeah, they don't.
Okay.
At least in very different capacities.
So they're both still around.
They're both still around,
but
but
not operating at the same
very
capacity.
different.
To put it nicely.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so now we're both working on another thing with another. It's like a whole. It's very interesting. But the fact that he's a one guy out of like 40 that we pitched at a startup event in like Redwood City.
Yeah.
And then now we're like co-hosting a podcast and working on something else.
Yeah.
Very interesting thought.
Yeah. Serendipity is a beautiful thing. And, our tagline is engineering serendipity. And so that was our goal. Like, how do we get you to meet people who not 100% of them are going to be like good connections, valuable connections, but like if you meet enough good people, then good things happen.
Yeah.
And that is just serendipity.
100%. You said something about, there's a very small chance that you meet someone on the street and they're going to turn out to be a good friend. Do you know about the restaurant Kinara?
Yeah, I love that place.
You love that, right? So in the back of Kinara, they have a prayer room, right? So people don't know about this. Like, so I'm Muslim, right? And so I was with my Muslim friends.
Mhm.
This is last fall, and we were in the back prayer room, and some guys were kind of praying with us.
Mhm.
Afterwards, we said, "What's up?" And I kid you not, 10 minutes after, we cram into my friend's RAV4. My friend and I are sitting in the trunk,
Mhm.
right? And there's 4 guys sitting in the middle seats, and then my friend and someone else driving, with the random guys we just met in the prayer room. And so now the guy who was driving the car and then this random guy that we met at the prayer room are, I kid you not, best friends. Anytime I FaceTime him, he's with him. And they live like an hour apart and they hang out every single week based off of randomly meeting at a restaurant.
Yeah, that's amazing. But you know what it is? Like they were at the same restaurant. So there's like at least some superficial commonality, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Also, are they same religion?
Yeah, both Muslim, both in tech, like
Okay.
both
Both
in
Muslim, both
Patagonia.
in tech.
Yeah,
Foundational value alignment.
Yeah.
Religion is like a huge proxy for value alignment.
100%.
Right? If you're with someone of the same, and you see this in real life every day, like people of the same religion tend to hang out more than with people from other religions.
Sure.
And it's just like value alignment.
Sure.
That's what it comes down to.
It's really interesting. I don't think I've ever told you that story, by the way.
No.
The Kinara story.
I mean, we've had a bunch of stories where you illegally park at Kinara, but
we don't talk about those.
that's not,
let me tell you about the park anywhere lights. Yeah, we're gonna keep that part for another podcast. But I guess so. Going back to Covalent, right? The AI has been progressing extremely fast recently, right? Stable Diffusion is all over Twitter and it's great. But these suggested algorithms of like suggesting people on Facebook for you to follow, or like, these people are people you may know on Instagram. Those algorithms have been around for a while and they're really good.
Mhm.
So how much of that, like from a technical perspective, how do you actually train an AI to be able to tell who's in my circle or who I would get along with, or even in your case, who like matches my personality?
Yeah. So Facebook's algorithms are not based on personality in general, right? It's just based on social graph. It's like,
Right.
I am very good friends with Omar. Omar is very good friends with Vishal. Maybe I know Vishal too, right? So it's like a recommender system based on those kind of things. In terms of our algorithms, we were matching on like arbitrary data, right? It was like we asked people questions, they would answer the questions, and then we would match based on their answers. And so it's like a fundamentally different problem that we were trying to solve.
Got it.
We're trying to help people develop these meaningful relationships. Whereas Facebook is really more about breadth. Like, how do you get people more connections?
So when you're asking these questions, do you have to like use NLP to like extract information from like plain text, or do you just have like multiple choice?
Yeah, so we were messing around with that. We initially just had multiple choice, but we found that we did design NLP models that could actually match people based on plain text quite well.
And so which one is like in effect before the pivot?
Yeah, it was mostly the multiple choice
Gotcha.
that was in effect.
Gotcha.
And then the NLP based stuff was in beta.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think, can you go more into the specific partnerships you guys have done and the results you've seen? So I know a few specific ones, Startup Grind, you have Notion on the site. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the results, and anything specific that is pertinent to the B2B side of the business?
Yeah, totally. So in terms of results, like the end users loved it. Like the people getting matched with other people, they absolutely loved it, because to them, it was like they got to meet people who are actually relevant to them. And our algorithms worked really well. And so we could actually connect people well based on the things that they had in common, at least based on the shallow things. Right. And so because of that, I think, we got a lot of really great feedback from them. And for example, I think my favorite quote was something along the lines of, "OMG, you found my work soulmate."
Interesting.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, like end user feedback was really good. The reason that we decided to pivot, and the thing that I think is challenging here, is especially for enterprise, for the B2B use case, it's not a super high priority problem for people to solve.
Makes sense.
Like this is like the first area of discretionary spending that goes away in a downturn. So for example, like the downturn over the past few months,
Yeah.
this kind of budget, HR budget, is the first thing that goes away. And so selling to HR departments is really hard as a result.
Is this an HR sell though? Is that because Shouldn't it be more closely tied to even sales BD?
Not really, because this is about employee engagement, right? And
Oh,
employee
okay.
engagement generally falls under the purview of HR or people ops.
So this is more like employee advocacy?
Yeah, employee engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What
Got
are you guys pivoting to? Is that public or?
Yeah, I can talk about it. It's like quite the pivot. Like pivot is, I'm using the word pivot very loosely here. But essentially we're pivoting to using machine learning and AI to help data teams automate a lot of their processes. So the problem is that today, business users don't have easy access to data. And so they have to request data and insights from data teams. And data teams take like 30 to 60 minutes per request.
Mhm.
And part of that is there's a lot of back and forth and there's a bunch of stuff there. And so we're helping data teams manage and handle those requests more efficiently. So instead of it taking 30 to 60 minutes, it can instead take 5. And the way we do that today is basically text to SQL. So you want some piece of data, you just describe to our platform what data you want. We'll write the SQL query and automatically pull that data. And so this significantly speeds up data teams.
So is that what you call like prompt engineering? Is that the same thing or is that different?
So it's similar.
Okay.
Prompt engineering is a part of what we need to do to build a system like this. So part of it is building like a large language model that is actually good at converting text to SQL, right? So that's the first piece of it. And then prompt engineering is figuring out what format you want to give the model input in and which formats work best. And so we have to do a lot of prompt engineering to figure out what the format of the context that we give the model is going to be. And then we also have to do some pre-processing and post-processing to make the model more effective.
Is this something that would only be technically possible in the last like year or two, or is this something that could have been done theoretically 5 years ago?
Yeah, so a lot of the best text to SQL models have come out in the past couple of years. So I would definitely say that this would have been very hard to do more than 2 years ago.
Interesting. And what like, because pivoting is something all founders go through at some point, right?
Yeah.
What goes into your decision making when you're like, okay, we're going to pivot from, what Covalent was before to kind of data engineering or?
Yeah, totally. I would say it depends on the person. This is a very subjective thing of like when to pivot. And this is like also one of the hardest questions for a founder to answer. It's really hard to know when to stop working on the thing that you're working on and go do something else because it's not going to work.
Mhm.
And like the trade-off is like maybe you're not being persistent enough, right? And so how do you know where the line is? For me, the way I look at it is if I can't logically or emotionally convince myself that the thing that I'm building is going to be huge, then I don't really have the motivation to keep working on it. And then we pivot.
And how big is the team right now?
Right now we have 2 people.
2 people.
Yeah. We trimmed down the team after the pivot.
I feel okay. That makes sense. One question I had for you, it was more based on, I guess, the previous version of Covalent, but I'm sure you have some insight on it. Onboarding, right, is a big thing, or like employee churn is something that a lot of founders have to deal with, right? How can you get your like talent to stay with you versus, starting their own thing 2 months in or going to Google, right? And I was doing kind of research on it, and I found that pre-boarding or like the onboarding stages are one of the biggest effects on, like decreasing churn with how long an employee stays on.
Sure.
What have you found with Covalent for like onboarding? Because that was something you guys were like including in your product, right?
Yeah, totally. We were exploring the onboarding use case. We found that was one of the more compelling use cases for enterprise, but at the same time, the problem wasn't that huge. Like generally what happens is when people are onboarded, there's a set of like maybe 5 to 15 people that they need to meet to do their job effectively. But it's not like we need to connect them with those people. We need to figure out who's relevant to them. It's more of they need to meet these 5 to 15 specific people, right? And there's like, there's some interesting things there, but overall, helping people connect with relevant people isn't really a big part of that onboarding process for most companies, which it should be. I totally think that it should be, but it's not.
Yeah.
What do you think like the ideal onboarding looks like in a very small, like I'm talking sub 10 person team?
That's a great question. And it's a really tough one too. I think this depends. This is also subjective. It depends on the person who's being hired and the manager. And so if the person who's being hired is very independent and they like to take things and run with them, which ideally if it's a less than 10-person team, then that's the kind of person you want. Then it should really be like give them essential information about the code base and other things and leave them to it. And they should be able to kind of figure it out. And then obviously there's a lot of like culture kind of dissemination that needs to happen, but ideally that happens before you hire them to figure out if they're actually a good fit.
Yeah.
So one of the other projects that Vishal and I are working on is a thing called Boulders. So basically building like a world where in 10 years, 5 years, however long, the only productivity app you need on your phone is messages, right? And so that's like a whole kind of nuanced conversation and why we're doing that. But my co-founder, he just started working, but recently started working at Catalog, Web3 music company. But he's like on their core engineering team, and he like raves about how much he likes the team. Fully remote, they're based in kind of New York and LA, and he's in San Francisco. And so one of the things he always talks about is how much autonomy he was given. Like I think his onboarding was like a few calls in the first week, and he literally writes his own like engineering tickets. Like he manages his own linear. He kind of like really, there's one stand up a week, and everything else is async. Like he has full control. And so that's something he really liked. Have you found that like the autonomy version of bringing on engineers like works best? Because the other counterpart to that is if you don't manage them, then are they going to get things done? Are you guys going to be moving in the right direction, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. At an early stage startup, I think autonomy is definitely the way to go. My answer would probably change if we were talking about a bigger company or a bigger startup. But at an early stage startup, if you're less than 10 people, then they kind of need to have autonomy. Otherwise, it's going to take like double the time, and people everything's just going to move slower. And so I think if you mentioned that if you give them autonomy and then they don't get things done, that's a problem. They probably shouldn't be on your team if that's the case.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that he kind of also mentioned when we were talking about is like there's a level of trust, right, in these organizations when they give you autonomy, and you don't want to lose that. Have you done anything related to Covalent about like trying to create that like trust between employee to employee or manager to,
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my management style a little bit. My management style is like very hands off. It's very much like, hey, this is like the company goal, and like we need to align on that goal, right? Everyone at the company kind of needs to align on that goal and understand why that's important. And once everyone understands why that's important, then we talk about how do we actually like get there. And if this goal is something that somebody else needs to work towards, or if that specific like sub goal is something that someone else is working towards, then I don't really care how they do it. It just needs to get done, right? And so I think that version of alignment on the goal and then being hands off about how we actually get there, if that is assigned to someone else, is like really, really important in an early stage startup. Like a lot of the people I've seen who have like not been able to manage, specifically engineers, well, end up like kind of micromanaging and just making it so that the engineer can't go and explore and do their best work. And so if you tell like an engineer who wants autonomy that they have to implement something in a very specific way, you're screwed. Like they're not going to want to do that, and they're going to leave.
Have you ever been in a position where someone else was managing you?
I've like interned at startups and like hedge funds.
Okay. Oh, hedge funds.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's a whole other kind of conversation. But of those managers, did any of them stick out to you as like, I would want to work for this person for 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
There were a couple. So I worked at this robotics startup after my freshman year in college. And my manager there was probably like one of the most influential people in terms of my overall career, just because they trusted me with things that an intern should not have been doing at a 5-person startup. I was kind of forced to like rise to that challenge. And I just grew as an engineer and a person so much there. And, he used to do these things where we'd like sit at a computer and he'd show me some of his best practices and the things that made him effective and efficient. And I remember thinking how crazy it was that he was so fast with some of the things that he was doing, especially from an engineering standpoint. And he really taught me like a lot there. And I would say I also had another manager at the hedge fund I worked at, who was a lot more hands off. He was much more like, hey, this is the thing that needs to happen. Go get it done. And he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. And that also just taught me a lot about autonomy and independence. And that's like really why I'm such a huge fan of giving people autonomy, especially at smaller companies and teams.
I kind of want to get more into your backstory and specifically VectorDash. So can you give us a little more info? Explain that a little bit. And I know that's where that connection to Furkan and kind of go into how that led you to Covalent, but also F.Inc in a way.
Yeah, totally. Let me start from the beginning, because otherwise it's not going to make sense.
Yeah.
So I got into coding in high school. I was taking a probability theory class, and we were doing like some sort of portfolio optimization. And I thought it was so cool that you could like use a computer program to trade stocks and like figure out what the right allocation was. And so I got super into algo trading, and I taught myself how to code as a result of that to write algo trading bots. And so I started doing that. And then I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon to study computer science and computational finance, which was kind of like that intersection of algo trading.
That's one major, or is that like double majoring?
Like double majoring.
Gotcha.
And I was studying robotics as well, because robotics was fun. About 1.5 years in, so my sophomore winter, I did a deep learning internship at MITRE, which is a defense contracting agency. And I ended up meeting my co-founder for VectorDash there. His name's Sharif. He's actually like right outside this room probably right now. And yeah, we like launched a cryptocurrency together. So we were just hacking on projects. And after that, we decided it would be really cool to work together. And so then we started VectorDash, which was basically a GPU sharing marketplace where on the supply side, you had people who wanted to rent out GPU compute. They might have been crypto miners or whatever. They just had GPUs lying around and they wanted to rent them out. And on the demand side, you had people who wanted to train machine learning models. So we basically built a platform where we connected the demand side with the supply side, because it's just like way cheaper to train on our platform than it was on AWS, for example. And so that worked well. We were doing revenue. We launched the platform. We were doing revenue. And then we realized there were 30 of these companies out there. And we had kind of a unique model where we were much more peer-to-peer and distributed than other companies. But there were also 30 companies out there solving the same problem. And so we thought about what we were kind of like uniquely suited to do. And the thing that came to mind, because we were peer-to-peer and distributed, is gaming. Because for gaming, you need very low latencies.
Yeah.
And so we could stream games from our servers to other people's computers in like sub 40 millisecond latencies, which was like unheard of in terms of like cloud gaming at the time. That was like state of the art, right? And so we essentially repurposed our platform to be a cloud gaming platform. So what happened in chronological order was we got a YC interview on the machine learning marketplace idea. And then we pivoted 2 days before the YC interview to cloud gaming. And then during our YC interview, we talked about cloud gaming. We got into YC. I dropped out of school. And then, we went through YC, built out the cloud gaming platform. And we got a bunch of users. It went a little bit viral in Latin America. A lot of things broke. My co-founders ended up leaving. And then I built out a bunch of other things, made it like a hybrid cloud solution where we could leverage like AWS machines, GCP, Azure, not just the peer-to-peer model. Yeah, so I worked on that for 1.5 years, and I met Furkan along the way. Furkan was our first investor, actually.
Wow.
Before YC?
Before YC.
Oh, wow.
So we had a Reddit post that sort of went viral, and Furkan hit us up. He met my co-founders.
Reddit.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Furkan just has like ridiculous access to the smartest people, and this is why like he's like in touch with all these things. Yeah, I mean, it was a really cool experience. We grew it to like 10K a month, mostly in Latin America, which was cool because Spanish was not my best class in school, and so I had to hire people from like Chile, who spoke Spanish really well, and that was another whole thing. It was fun, and ended up shutting the company down after 1.5 years because we were growing pretty fast, but I wasn't excited about like the long-term vision for where this was going. And
Yeah.
I had kind of developed this thesis that consumer infrastructure plays are going to become commoditized. And so unless you have some sort of unique moat or unique software that no one else can really build, it's really hard to build a profitable company on that.
And then give us a few takeaways from that in terms of the lessons you learned that now shape how you're moving forward as not only a founder, because of this, I'm referring to your Substack when you pointed out a few key points, but
Yeah.
something I thought was very interesting was founder market fit and how that translates to product market fit and vice versa. And you can obviously get into the other lessons, but kind of like those high level takeaways that you are now saying, well, I'm not going to do that again, or let me look for this the next time I'm iterating on a project or idea.
Yeah, totally. So let me preface this by saying that success comes in many different forms, and there's no like one path or one way to do things to be successful. It's very different by the person. And so I'm just going to preface what I'm saying by that. And so I can say whatever here, but at the end of the day, it's like very subjective, and success happens in a lot of different ways. So in terms of founder market fit, I didn't used to think that it was that important, which is like one of the reasons that I was okay working on VectorDash. I was not a gamer. And so cloud gaming is like definitely not up my alley. And I think like that fundamental misunderstanding of the market makes getting to product market fit significantly harder. You can still do it, and there are people who have done it, but it's just much, much, much harder. And so I'm a pretty strong believer that, at least for me, founder market fit is really important. There's a lot of things I'm interested in, so it doesn't really make sense for me to work on things that I'm not interested in, right? So I'm super into ML, AI, and I love talking to people. So the love of talking to people is why, like, I think I was a good person to start Covalent. My co-founder and I are very similar in this. But we love talking to people, and we think communities are great, and we want to make them more valuable, which is why starting the initial version of Covalent made a lot of sense. I've always been super into ML and AI, and we can talk about some of the projects I've worked on in the past in those regards. But that's why like starting this data team automation thing, SQL query generation, is like very up my alley.
Interesting. And I mean, I guess you just mentioned that you worked on multiple projects in the past. I am curious to know about those, but even before that, you know how when you're learning development, some of the first things you'll do is build a to-do list app. When you're trying to be a founder, a lot of first-time founders build social apps. I was one of them, right? What do you think a good like starting point is to get into ML and AI?
Build something. My answer to those types of questions almost always is going to be build something. And you know, people learn in different ways. So I was okay at school. I did pretty well. I was good at learning from books. I think a lot of founders aren't like that. And so for a lot of founders, like just building something is the way to learn. And for me now, today, if I wanted to go learn how to do some like weird distributed computing task, I would just go do it. I'd like find a problem that I could solve with that thing and just go do it if I wanted to learn it.
So you don't have any suggestions on like project ideas?
Specific projects, no. A lot of it comes down to like, what are you motivated to do? Are you super into music, and do you want to learn how to like use an API? Go use the Spotify API and like build playlists based on things. If you're super into music and you want to use ML to do stuff, there's like so many projects that you could do around that. It just depends what you're interested in and what gets you motivated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So on that, and just talking about motivation, you're pivoting now, right? Can you talk more about the community aspect and also F.Inc too, right? In terms of has being part of F.Inc, having this community in itself, impacted the way you decided to pivot the business, just in terms of learnings, networking, having this foundation of other founders that you can not only bounce ideas off of, but you can learn from in terms of like, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that. How do I carry some of this over? And it's like, okay, well, this isn't working. I'm going to go do this. Just in terms of executing, like how has this community benefited you?
Yeah, I think there are two ways that I can talk about. One is kind of just the general knowledge, learning, understanding that you get from being in a room with some of the smartest founders in the world, right? F.Inc. is, I've met like most of the smartest people I know from F.Inc. And just like being surrounded by those people constantly just makes you like learn a lot, right? So that's like one of the things. And then the other is if I'm facing a problem in my company, then it's really easy for me to go tap on the shoulder of the guy next to me and be like, yo, you want to take a walk? And we've got like a beautiful spot down here. It's like at Fort Mason. There's a pier. You can see the sunset. It's beautiful. Point is, it's really easy to call on people for help or advice and things like that. And it's really easy to get 10 different perspectives from really smart people and then use those perspectives to make a decision yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where a lot of the value comes in. And also friends, like the people here are great. They're really smart, but they're also really nice people. So friendship is really important on the journey of being a founder because that can be pretty lonely.
For people who don't have the F.Inc network, right? Someone who's in New York or someone who's still getting into things. How would you, or if we're just like jumping back to before you had the F.Inc network, where did you find the first people that like, I don't want to say understood your problems, but like, you know, the first people you could go to for things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was kind of around for I was like one of the original members of F.Inc. So I was kind of around for the inception of F.Inc. when Furkan like kind of was looking for places to buy and we ended up on this place in Fort Mason. And so I've known Furkan for a long time. So back in the day when I was in college and considering dropping out, a lot of it was just like Furkan, right? I mean, Furkan's like a force. If you've ever talked to him,
Yeah.
I remember after my co-founders left the company and things weren't going well at VectorDash, there was a period of 2 months where I just like didn't want to do anything. I was sitting on my couch, algo trading and watching Netflix. It was terrible. I remember I moved back home to Virginia for a bit. I was living in SF at the time. Went back to Virginia, and then for 2 months straight, I would talk to Furkan on a weekly basis. We had a weekly call set up, and I talked to him on a weekly basis. And I was so hyped after every one of those calls, and the hype didn't really die down. So it just kept adding. And eventually, like 2 months later, I was totally fine, ready to like work on the company again. And I moved back to SF and, made a lot of progress there. But
that's crazy.
So I would say like find those
inspiring
people.
there.
Find your Furkan.
Find your Furkan. Exactly.
Yeah, tell your 4th grade teacher, look at you now.
Well, I still can't draw, so maybe she's
So we do this thing kind of at the end of our podcast.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you've heard any of them, but they tend to get pretty interesting.
Let's do it. What's the thing?
So for you, I've picked out a few tweets you've had, and
Oh God.
just good conversation starters. I just want to know what you were thinking,
Okay.
right? So we'll just jump right in, right? We'll do the first one. My bank account can't keep up with my friends raising money. Need everyone to stop raising for a couple of months. Thank you. Now, what do you mean by that?
I mean, if my friends are raising money, I gotta invest, right? I gotta put my money where my mouth is.
So is that what you mean? So you're
Yeah.
saying you want to invest in those
I do
ventures?
invest. Yeah. If my friends start a company, then I invest.
Can you give us any highlights you've had or
Build
any
Space.
company? Build Space.
Ooh,
Okay.
That's got to
Yeah.
be good.
Yeah.
Gotta feel good.
Well, I mean, I invested in their most recent round, so it doesn't feel as good. But being on this journey with Farza is always a good time.
How did you meet Farza? Was it also off of Reddit?
I think Farza met my old VectorDash co-founder Sharif, and then Farza was living in our apartment for a bit. He was like in the living room, and then I moved to SF and we overlapped for a bit, and that's how I met Farza for the first time. And then Farza and I got pretty close, and we started. We actually lived together in Orlando for a little bit, and then moved to San Diego for a month when he hired the first couple people at Build Space. And yeah, Farza and I are pretty tight.
What were you guys doing in Orlando?
We were just messing around. I mean, we were both working on our companies, and it was COVID, and I was tired of being at home. He was tired of being at home. We were like, "Yo, you want to like live together somewhere for a bit and just
as
get
you do
some
with people you
energy?"
just meet off the internet.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you don't, then I mean, what are you really doing with your life?
Okay. Well, here's another good one, and I'm surprised no one's thought of this. Who's building read receipts for Slack? Let me pay you. Why don't they have that?
Yeah.
Why are read receipts not a thing on Slack?
No one gave me an answer on Twitter, so I still don't know.
But why'd you? It just seems so obvious.
Well, I guess sometimes you'll get a message from someone on Slack, and obviously there's workarounds around it, but like you get a message where it's like someone sends you 4 things to do. You look at it,
yeah.
and then you can take your time, do whatever, take your time to do those things. Sure, you could, if there are read receipts, then it's just like, hey, can you do this thing for me real quick? And you see the message, so just read.
Yeah.
And now you have to reply like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I feel like it just
the
adds
psychology
more.
of it kind of messes with you.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, we use Telegram though. Like our entire,
Yeah.
every company, like
We
every
love
project
Telegram.
I'm running on right now, it's all run on Telegram. I used to have the Slack, I used to have the Linear, all of that.
Yeah.
Telegram and occasionally iMessage. And it's the best stack, especially because we're also like really small and very little.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay, and then we got a startup idea. I think this is a good one.
Oh,
This one's not bad.
okay. That's what you say every time.
I want a payment service that can run experiments to automatically find the optimal price for my product.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you had, you know how people have that little pricing page with 3 columns?
Mhm.
Every startup has the pricing page with 3 columns and it's like 3 different tiers.
Yeah.
Because all the business psychology books talk about how that's like the right thing to do.
Anchoring and
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And so what if those numbers could just automatically be adjusted and then you could look at how conversion affects things? I remember when I was at VectorDash, we used to have, this isn't the exact same thing, but it's relevant. We used to have a free trial and we had a lot of credit card abuse because gamers tend to abuse credit cards.
Yeah.
And so we actually got rid of the free trial, and Furkan had been pushing me to do this for a little bit, and I finally listened. And what happened? The conversion rate did not change at all. So like our conversion rate to paid was the exact same, but now we didn't have the free trial. So there was no card abuse.
Huh.
Actually, I think our conversion rate got a little bit higher because people wanted to try it out. And so, yeah, we were just making a lot more money. It was way more profitable as a result.
That's interesting. I wonder if I'm sure other people can use that as a good use case.
What was the pricing on like, okay, was it monthly base? Like
We had different tiers. So it was, I think, like $20 a month and like $5 or $7 a week.
So I guess in that pricing tier, it makes sense to kind of not have a free trial. Would you say that, you know, if you're building something that has, let's say $150 a month or even like $400 a month, still small enough to where you don't need a whole like sales team to make sure that things go through.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like small enough to, big enough to where it's not just like a no-brainer decision for someone to buy it.
Yeah.
In that pricing tier, do you think you would need like a free trial?
In many cases, yeah. But also your market wouldn't be gamers. So there would also probably be a lot less fraud if you're trying to sell a $200 a month product.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. And then here's the one that I liked that I thought was interesting. Now you titled it "Trying to Convince a Web3 Founder to Pivot."
Mm-hmm.
And this is a conversation. But the crux of it is here. Forget about Web3 and community and enterprise. Hard pivot to yogurt-based healthcare, dairy health. That's what he's saying to you. And you said, I'm pretty sure I'm reading this right, but dude, I'm telling you, yogurt is a superfood and no one knows it yet. This is a massive business opportunity. Okay, now let's take a few steps back.
Yeah.
The guy's working on a Web3 product. Okay, Web3 founder, and the pivot is saying there's a massive business opportunity, yogurt-based superfood. Now let's figure this out. Let's talk this out. Okay? Because I think I love yogurt too. Do you like yogurt, Omar?
Sure. Yes, Vishal, I like yogurt. Do you like yogurt?
Let me tell you something. Yogurt is the best thing that has been invented since like whatever that gardening tool that made farmers more productive was. The
What?
steel whatever.
Wait a minute.
I'm
The
serious.
rake?
Huh?
The rake? What are you talking about?
No, the like the steel. I don't know what it's called.
Okay,
I didn't really
hold
pay
on.
attention in that class.
You can't use the analogy and not explain. You didn't
It
explain
was the
what
best thing.
It was the
since
best
that
thing
other
since
thing.
a product I don't know.
Okay, listen. Faye 0% Greek yogurt has 120 calories per serving. It's got 19 grams of protein per serving. If you eat 3 servings, I eat 3 servings of that every day for breakfast with granola.
Okay.
That is like at least half your protein intake for the day, right?
Okay.
And like you don't get hungry as much during the day. It's like it's literally the best thing ever.
You're
I'm
not
pretty sure it's
Chobani
good
guy?
for your skin.
You're a Faye guy?
I hate Chobani. I love Faye.
Why?
Chobani smells weird.
What flavor?
The plain.
Plain. So no flavor.
No flavor.
And then you put in what? Just regular granola?
Yeah, like some healthy
Fruits?
granola.
Any fruits in there?
Sometimes if I'm feeling fancy.
But what's the business?
Yogurt-based superfoods. Put Faye Greek 0%. I have a friend who makes like flour out of yogurt. So she'll mix yogurt and flour and make bagels out of it.
Bagels.
It's amazing.
What?
And they're so good. They taste so good.
Is that can we buy that? What is that?
I'll ask her. I'll let you know.
That sounds great.
It's amazing. And it's so healthy because it's just Faye yogurt. It's like plain yogurt.
So she takes the yogurt.
Uh-huh.
So explain that again?
She mixes in flour.
Yeah.
And then she like, I'm not good at cooking, so I don't know what the word is, but she like mixes it together.
Okay.
And then she puts it in like a toaster oven, I think. And then in like the shape of a bagel, and then a bagel comes out. It's amazing.
This is better than a Web3 concept? Or
Oh, yeah.
blockchain?
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. Everyone eats food. Not everyone's in Web3. It's a no-brainer.
I guess you're right, because a lot of people, your thesis is a lot of people don't know yogurt is a superfood.
Yeah, I think it's severely underrated.
Protein-based yogurt, not like
Greek
regular-
yogurt.
Greek yogurt.
Are you the reason we have so much Greek yogurt in the fridge here?
Probably.
Are you? So you're not a yogurt guy.
No, I like yogurt.
You like
Just
yogurt.
not as much as you guys, but I like it.
Well, he likes it. He likes it better than farming. I don't know exactly what he was trying to get at, but
Yeah, I still don't know.
can we just get back to that for a second? It's a steel product that farmers use.
It was like the thing that kicked off the Industrial Revolution,
Okay.
maybe.
But you're saying it's better than that.
It's better than that.
It's like the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial
is
Revolution.
here.
Yeah, let's say
And then there's yogurt.
And then there's
let's
yogurt.
say that it's the best thing since the Industrial Revolution.
So that could be the company tagline.
Yeah.
The best thing since
Look,
the
if
Industrial
I'm-
Revolution.
Okay, let me walk you through it. So
but you
it's
want to
gonna-
do a product line of superfoods that
for
is-
sure. It's gonna make bars. Okay, you can make bread, yogurt-based bread. Okay,
Okay.
and it's gonna be way healthier than normal bread. You probably make yogurt-based anything.
That's what I was gonna say. If you
Yeah.
could make bagels,
Yeah,
you can really do anything here.
exactly.
See, if I go into a grocery store and I see yogurt, probably a picture of a cow, and then the best thing since the Industrial Revolution,
You'll know that I made this happen.
I'm going to put it back, and I'm going to close the fridge, and I'm going to keep walking down the aisle.
It's your loss, man.
Probably.
So-
But you're not Are you working on it?
No,
If
Okay.
you're working on it, I'll buy it for sure.
maybe I should be. I mean, in the future, I'm definitely working on it in the future.
And then you can own your own farm.
Yeah.
And figure out what that metal thing is.
Wait, how
Oh yeah, there you go,
how do they make Greek yogurt?
dude. I'm not the guy to ask about that.
It's not that guy, bro.
But that's the hard. So here's the real lesson. If you're struggling in Web3 and blockchain, you really need to pivot into yogurt.
I'm just saying it's like a really good idea, and someone's gonna do it in the next 15 years. Like guaranteed, someone's gonna do it because if no one else does, I will. So
But you said people are wasting their time in Web3. Like you need to pivot to yogurt if your product isn't working.
No,
That should be the lesson, no?
I'm not saying people are wasting their time in Web3. I'm just giving them an alternative.
And that was the top one, right?
Yeah, that was the top one.
Mm.
There's another really great startup idea that I think is cool. I came across this article the other day where this guy was able to turn human poop into electricity. He was able to extract the methane. Okay, no. Listen, I ran the numbers here. The number
Wait,
of
what?
cows.
What do you
Okay,
mean what?
No. If you think about the amount of poop that is produced at farms in the United States
Okay.
by cows every day,
Yeah.
that is enough. I think so. When I did the math a while ago, it was something like $3 trillion worth of electricity can be produced by that, assuming like the 12 cents per kilowatt hour
A year,
yeah, $3 trillion per year
based on all the cow poop in the world.
yeah
Why
in
cow?
the United States.
It can't be any poop,
I mean, cows just poop a lot.
but we can't use the other animals' poop.
You could if you wanted,
But you didn't use it in your numbers.
no, because I didn't want to look up every animal and how much they poop.
He's like, I draw the line at cows.
No, I'm just doing due diligence. I'm just seeing.
No, I appreciate
how
it.
good
I
the
think
numbers
these
are,
good
where they're
questions.
coming from. Okay, and then now what? Now we know that.
Oh yeah, so I hit up this professor who wrote this article about the toilet that converts poop into electricity. He's not pursuing that stuff anymore, but he did respond to me. So,
And what did he say?
he was interested in the business idea. Like he thought it was a cool idea, but unfortunately he's not working on the tech anymore. So
Gotcha. Is that
Yeah.
also something you do maybe after the yogurt?
yeah,
But
think
this
so.
is super complicated tech to figure out the scale, right?
it is pretty complicated tech.
Yeah.
You can this actually exists. There are companies that do this, and one of these devices that turns poop into electricity, they'll like sugarcoat it with other words, but it's basically that. One of these devices costs about $750,000. And we were actually looking into this. Like we were thinking, what if we rented one of these
Mhm.
and just went to every farm in California and got them to convert all their cow poop into electricity? We paid them a little bit. We take a cut. That's
But
like
there's no
a few
reason they
$1
would
million
say
business.
no.
Hmm?
They would never say
There's
no
zero-
to that,
yeah,
right?
there's
'Cause
absolutely
what
no
do they?
reason.
It's just manure.
Yeah, correct.
And well, okay, but there's logistical issues transporting this. No,
No, because you could maybe. I didn't figure out all the
so
details.
we need to hire a logistics company. Can you look that up?
I'm okay. I'm gonna leave that to you. I will watch on this one from the sidelines.
That's probably a better idea, I would say, than the yogurt, because you're just competing with so many players in the food space.
I think the yogurt-based superfood market is severely underserved. I would buy all those products, and then I wouldn't have to.
Yeah, but you're
eat-
competing with branding. Like what's to stop Faye or Chobani from just squashing you?
I mean, that's like asking why build any tech company? What's to stop Google from squashing you?
Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't,
God is there.
I don't know. I mean, I'm learning that yogurt's better than tech. That's
I haven't yet reached that point.
you haven't
but
reached that point yet,
I'm happy you're figuring things
but
out.
you're close.
You'll get there, Omar.
You're
Just a couple more conversations with me, you'll get
Just a
there. I
couple
promise.
more, one of those walks around the pier.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
There you go.
I
so
know
this
we're
is
doing
what
after.
goes on during the walks.
this is exactly. I mean, what else would go on?
Cow poop into electricity. I never thought.
It's a really good idea. Someone should work on it.
well now.
People are working on it.
Well, if anyone's listening that wants to work on it,
Hit me up.
hit
I'll
them up.
invest. I'll invest and I'll like help you get it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you just got funding. You got an expert in the space to bounce ideas off of and get the ground. I mean, but balls in your court if you're interested.
I also have an in with that professor who built out the tech. So let me know.
There's going to be a unicorn out of this,
I bet there will be.
and it might shit too. There might be some poop there to collect.
Completely unnecessary. We're having a serious conversation, boys. This is ridiculous. Please.
So serious.
Well, on that note, Omar, do you want to?
Yeah, this is somehow I always think that these outros can't get any worse, and yet somehow every single time it manages.
I feel like we reached another level with this one that I didn't anticipate.
I hope we never go here again. As Jacob said before, I never want to have this
I
conversation
never-
again.
As in like how outlandish it gets from like, as in like deviating from the central theme.
Yeah.
Like I never thought we'd get where we got.
I don't know that it's a good thing that we did. But anyways, where can everyone find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter, ABHARGAVA20. You used to, I had a thing that I built that would DM you an NFT if you followed me. That is no longer working. I got to redeploy that. But yeah, follow me on Twitter, hit me up.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. And thanks everyone for listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure you drop a comment, subscribe, like the video, all the fun things, and we will see you next week. Peace.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.